this is your opportunity to provide your leadership at the CNLA level with your thoughts.
So I'll introduce myself, Peter Ganan. I have a landscaping business in Toronto. We do design, construction, and maintenance. I am chair of Landscape Canada, which nationally encompasses contractors, maintenance companies, irrigation, lighting, designers. So it's basically all of the contracting aspects of our value chain and the issues that are related to those functions. So I also have the privilege of working with many of these folks on other committees and Green Cities Foundation, climate adaptation. You'll hear a lot more about those, I'm sure, as you go down the line. What we do at Landscape Canada is we're addressing the biggest issues has been for as long as I have been in business, which is 1986 we started, and labor was an issue in 1986, and it has not ceased to be an issue. The problems and challenges we face is new every year. There's problems coming at us from different directions every year, and we respond to it. We have to market ourselves differently. We have to respond to our staff differently. The demands from our workers are changing year to year, and that is something that we're constantly adapting to. And on a big picture, we're also working to create coalitions with other organizations. I have had also the privilege to travel to Europe several times to join European contractors to work on, consultations with them on the initiatives they've had in Europe that have been successful, and to share what has been successful in Canada with them. And that collaboration has helped us, but it also helps lift that message. So part of what Frank was talking about is marketing. And the value of marketing is multiplying that message, and using the same messaging over and over again is where you start to get reach. And it is much more effective if we're using the same language, we're stating the same facts, and that's where it gets more traction. So I don't know if there's anything else and how much time you have for the landscape contractors, but I was the one on that questionnaire that Lynn passed around where I said one of my biggest strengths as a leader is my ability to listen. So I think where I have an opportunity here is to hear back from people that don't get to talk to me often as LCC chair, and I look forward to hearing about issues and problems that you're experiencing. So
I think the best to roll down the line and take questions and interact.
Hi, everybody. Jeff Olson. I own a business called Brookdale Treeland Nurseries, which is just around the corner from here, with a few locations in Ontario, actually, and one in the West Coast. I've been the grower chair for 2 years at the end of my term, and it's been a real pleasure working with this team and of course, all the staff from CNLA. So I'm honored to have served. And I think I'm just as honored to pass the baton on to the next growers chair, who's going to be Stuart Gillies. And I think that, some of the healthiest things you can do on a board is move on and make sure that there's always new blood coming in, because new ideas are going to come from that. And so I think that's I'm still here to do any help that anybody needs, but at the current time, Stuart's going to do a great job for us. And I just want to take this opportunity too to say what a pleasure it's been to work with Jamie Albers, who's our staff member looking after growers' issues. And what really happens on the grower side is the issues are very tactical. We're dealing with craziness and imminent issues that happen. Trucks are stuck at the border and they need to move across, and they need our help to do that. and our help, Jamie's help, to do this, to help growers out across the country. One of the biggest issues, and I think that for those of you that have been with us for the past couple of years, is the box tree moth was the largest pest issue that our growers have faced, probably in the history of the industry over the last couple of years. And it basically wiped out our opportunity to export a major crop into the US. It would be like the potato growers not being able to export potatoes. You know, it was that serious. And we worked really hard on that over the last couple of years to get the border reopened, negotiate with the USDA, negotiate with our American counterparts, and our team. Finally, around just before Christmas, a couple of days before Christmas, we're able to have success and get the border open for our growers in British Columbia so that that product could again move south. The value of that, and as an organization that we provide to our members, is invaluable. So that was a huge win for our group, and a major issue that we were really at points going like, I don't think, I think we're going to throw, millions of boxwood out across this country. And although we're throwing just tens of thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands out, the issue is actually seeing traction. And I think the greatest thing that came out of that was the negotiation with the US and them seeing us as a true partner. Oftentimes our negotiations, whatever it is, political or whatever, with the US, they're the elephant, we're the mouse. And we were really seen as equals. And our science is so good that they're actually taking our science and using it in their businesses down there to make issues like this, the boxwood issue in particular, and others that are coming down the pike. We're like the leaders in the industry. So kudos to our team and to the group who helped out with all of those things. I won't drone on, but here we are at the end of the pandemic. I think one of the biggest issues for growers across the country is what's demand going to look like. On the contractor side, I think your biggest issue is labor. Our labor issues get solved by us through our temporary foreign worker program and through our SOP workers. 80% of our workforces don't live in this country, and they come in for 8 months of the year. We wouldn't have an industry if it wasn't for that, or the industry would look very different. So we're fortunate not to have those issues, but we have our currently biggest issue is what is demand going to look like post-pandemic when all of these people that were gardening are back to work, are back out of the house, are back on vacation. What does that look like? So that's going to be a large issue for our growers group over the next couple of years. And I think I'll leave it at that. We'll take questions after. Thank you for your time. Bill.
Sure. Well, I'd really enjoy the Q&A piece more than introducing myself, but I'll just say that there probably hasn't been a job in the association that I haven't had a go at or have a crack at. So I've gone from certification to Landscape Canada chair, and then worked through the executive president, past president, moved on to COHA, which is the Canadian Ornamental Horticulture Alliance, and was president there, and I'm currently the past president. I'm in the research chair portfolio now, and my colleague who's on the screen, who can probably see us if she can wave, is Christine. She might better jump in. I'm vice chair of government relations, and Christine asked if I'd sort of sit in for her just in case it was difficult for her to do her job from Zoom. But we're doing some great work at government relations as well. So I'm really looking forward to your questions. Just before I pass it on to Anthony, I am in the landscape industry. I'm also a grower and have a business in Calgary, Alberta. So we're in commercial construction, residential design build. We're also in commercial maintenance, and we're a grower as well. So we've got a pretty good sort of cross-section of understanding of what the industry challenges are, from some of the things that you mentioned to some of the things that Peter mentioned and others. So I would really like to answer questions more than talk about what I've done. So thank you for the time.
Thanks, Phil. Hello, everyone. Anthony O'Neill. I'm sitting here on behalf of Robin Godfrey because Robin is the chair of Garden Centers Canada. Robin owns a couple of garden centers in Nova Scotia, Lakeland Plant World and Atlantic Gardens. And of course, he got tangled up in the snowstorm, so he's not here. But he also sits as a board on the board of the International Garden Center Association. And I'm sure that's the first thing he'd bring up is that this year, the International Garden Center Congress is being held here in Canada, in Quebec. And so he'd want everybody to know about that. It should be a fantastic event. The International Garden Center Association, of course, ties right into to our other relationships around the world, as well as Peter was mentioning with ELCA. So it's a similar association to that. Garden centers are doing very well right now in as an association. The association is somewhat on a little bit of a revamp to get some training modules done that will be coming. So hopefully that'll be coming down, and I know Landscape Ontario is helping with that. So Robin would want to mention that as well. Yeah, and membership growth. So we'd love to build a membership across the country as best we can. So provincial help to get that done. Anything we can do to collaborate with the provinces to grow the garden center group, that would be great.
So my name is Kevin Noss from small town Moncton, New Brunswick, which had 3 inches of snow. It took me 2 days to get here. But anyway, I just literally arrived 15 minutes ago. So this is thrown into it. So my part up here is quite, I'd say, different than some, because you talk about membership, but membership services. So the committee's basically all here, so I have to watch what I say. I'll get in trouble because they're all the provincial reps. But the member services is what's very interesting is I find it seems to be the biggest link that we have, or one of the biggest links, in my opinion, to the actual membership, because this is where they see some value. And when I go into meetings, first thing they say is, how much are we getting off a truck this year? So, but that's something, it's put together, very hardworking team back at the office. And also I should thank Leslie Cornell. She was going to sit in my place because I literally was texting on the ride here if I was going to make it in time. So thank you, Leslie, for willing to fill in. But basically what we're looking for in this committee is any supplier or partner across the country that we can have a win-win-win philosophy. And that's kind of the mandate, as well as having some representation across the country. It's not going to be in every city, but some representations across Canada. And by win-win-win, I mean a win. If the supplier doesn't see a win, then they're not going to sign up. A win, everyone wants to see a discount for our membership. That's the big win that everyone sees. And the other win is something back to the association for all their work and advertising, etc. So that's the kind of the big mandate for this group. We're always looking. This past year, I don't know how many texts and emails I've got about what about this, what about that. The big push that we're trying, and it's been really, really hard, just so everyone in the room knows, is towards the electric equipment. And it seems like pushing a rope a little bit, trying to get these people on board. We've made some progress. And even at LO Congress a few weeks ago when I was there, we talked to some big suppliers, and it's tough. They don't seem quite ready to deal with us yet. They're trying to figure it out too. So, but we are working hard with this group to try to get something working together. I don't know if the cat's out, but I think GM has released some updates. So check your emails, because I think there's some increased discounts on GMs from what I'm hearing through the grapevine. So that's good. So the other part, I wear 2 hats. Today it's a black hat. I'm not on which side I should have on, but it's everyone's favorite insurance committee. And you sit on every committee, Phil. I haven't seen you on that one yet, just saying. It's how do I word it? It's there's a lot to it. And I think I fell asleep at a meeting, and next thing I know I was on the committee, and that's what you shouldn't do. But the last few years, you know, it's one of those necessary evils. No one really wants to talk about insurance till they need it. And it's been a hot topic. So all I know is there's two part when I say insurance, and that took me about a year to figure that out, but we have the liability side, which I think you heard from Marsh earlier, which I wasn't here for. And then we also have the benefit side through People Corp. And all I can say, there's a lot of moving parts in the background. We meet two big meetings, 2 a year, plus there's quite a few meetings in between the meetings, so we are working hard to try to benefit the membership in any way possible. So I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
I'm Jeff, and my areas are HR and professional development. So on the HR front, we do a lot of ongoing work, supporting the Skills Canada competition. We work with CARC, and we heard a great update on a lot of the initiatives and resources that they provide our members. So really happy to be invited to sit at that table. We also work with ESDC, and as you heard, Nancy does a great job helping represent our interests. She advocates for changes and gets us access to programs, and again, we're really lucky to have her ear and to be invited to be a part of her working group. We also help members navigate a lot of day-to-day issues. So, anything from new regulations. The pandemic was a big thing that we assisted with as we were all trying to grapple with that. And looking forward, there's a few big projects that the committee is working on. So we were trying to brainstorm some things we could do to try to help members grapple with the labor shortage, especially on the landscape side. As Jeff said, I think the SOP program is amazing for growers, but we don't have anything as good as that for landscape yet. So a few of our projects we're working on is we've developed a temporary foreign worker peer group, and we've heard and we know that a lot of members don't quite use that program yet. We heard a bit about it during some of the presentations. We think it could be a good answer for us, maybe the way the SOP program has been for the growers. And we've developed a peer group that can help members navigate the program, apply for temporary foreign workers and host them. And through that process, we're hoping to create a guideline and sort of a future template for other companies to use if they want to also take part of the program. We're currently working on a wage and charge out survey. I think that should help in a lot of cases. I know when we're talking to government, statistics really do speak quite loudly, and it's been a while since we've had an up-to-date wage and charge out survey. We're working on an employer of choice program. CARC is also doing work in that way, so we're seeing if we can partner up with them. And the idea there is that if landscape companies can, learn and adopt best practices, we're hoping that we can kind of raise the image of our industry. And we're hoping as people have better experiences working within our industry, we'll be an industry that people, choose and seek out and desire to work in, and we can hopefully increase our appeal. But we're also hoping to provide a mechanism to companies to maybe highlight the fact that they are an employer of choice that do really great things to have a really great culture to work within. And then the last one that we're hoping to create is a national hiring day, just to highlight, some of the career opportunities that are available within the industry, and maybe dispel some of the myths at the same time around maybe the perception and some negative points that people think about in terms of landscaping that just frankly aren't true anymore. On the PDC front, we oversee CNLA certification programs. We also have some pretty good influence and help to promote Red Seal apprenticeship. And looking forward in terms of PDC, we are working towards exploring a micro-credentialing program. And just in terms of hearing from members, we feel like there's a need for that. The sort of vision there is to offer some specialized education to member companies that can maybe help skill up some of their unskilled staff. That would lead to credentialing, but it would also be very much aligned with Red Seal and also the Canadian Landscape Standard, and kind of bring all of those great aspects of our industry together. And the micro-credentialing could be part of someone's journey in terms of their career within our industry.
My name is Alan White. I am your current climate adaptation chair, as well as sit on the executive of CNLA and chair the Green City Foundation. I've had a 35-year history in landscape management, plant sciences, pest control, fertilizer, water. which I don't know if it prepared me well for taking on the climate file, but certainly made me aware through my history of navigating the public domain around landscapes and the products and services we bring, was kind of probably at the forefront of environmental pressure. So I had the beauty of being really a champion to create this committee within CNLA, which is a committee of chairs. The exciting part about that, not only working on an emerging file like climate and how urban landscapes and all our products and services connect with that, but also working with everybody sitting at this table, their unique priorities, their unique perspective on the trade coast to coast, all the different sectors from farm to distribution, retail, and then into obviously the landscape design build. But also exploring and building and bringing our position on climate adaptation to the forefront, to find ways to insert the great work we do and the passion that has always been at this table around plants, people, and the environments that we operate in, and aligning it with what's going on in current headlines in the rest of the world, and trying to bring deliverables and tools through each of those priorities back down to the membership. Sometimes our goals and our ideas and the conversations we hear are very planetary, global level. How do we bring that to local voices, local conversations, and empower not just our communities to participate in climate, but our employees, our businesses and members to see the opportunities in it. We support the GR activities. Christine will speak in a bit. Jeff just spoke about HR, comms, research, Landscape Canada, Garden Center Canada, and the Growers Canada committees in particular at the beginning. There's so much of that conversation happening within those committees. Also, our provincial associations across Canada are looking for resources and how to have a unified voice around some of these opportunities. Our activities outside of the conversations here are pretty big and sometimes slow, sometimes quick, depending on the conversation going on within the environment that we operate in. But for the last probably 2-3 years, finding metrics and ways to insert the clean air calculator, we heard Frank talk about it a little bit earlier, how that can come to the forefront, the web platform to bring it, the Green City Foundation, a social vehicle facing the public. These are all intentional actions that have been born from the Climate Committee as means to bring that narrative forward. But it also takes a lot more than that with the help of government relations here in Canada, working with Agriculture, Agri-Food Canada, ECCC. Hopefully everybody has the same acronym book that we have. There's many within government opening new doors instead of just Agriculture Canada, but even Health Canada and others. The importance and the power of plants, people and environment play in our future. But some of those conversations go beyond Canada's borders. We've been leaders in the climate file with AIPH and the work Bill Hardy, our current president, is doing as the International Green Cities Chair. The work that we're doing with ALCA and the EU Restoration Act that they're working on around nature-based solutions. And most recently, many of us here on our leadership team attended COP28 in Dubai, as well as last year in Egypt, COP27. And our first was COP26 in Glasgow, where many of us, if we follow the headlines on climate, was where plants were introduced, carbon capture, and now we've seen it evolve to nature-based solutions. So where do we fit in those conversations? Those what seem lofty and the goals of what we do and the conversations we have actually translates into real action back here in Canada as a result of COP28 and some of the interactions we had there. And more of it will be discussed in our board meeting tomorrow, and it's in our reports too. So anybody, please feel free to go to the website, look at the details. But next week we'll be presenting Phil Paxton and myself to the Canadian Senate on soils and the importance of life and what it brings to the city. And we will be a unique voice in an agriculture forestry conversation that's gone on for years. And they're going to be closing this study with the importance of urban environments, plants, and what soils bring to it. So our committee, again, I have the luxury of working with these great minds, but I also have the opportunity to listen to all the voices in Canada, and hopefully through those conversations, bring things back to our members in all sectors across Canada to what I believe maybe, and with the help of Frank and our comms team here at CNLA and in each of our provinces, bring back a very unique opportunity that benefits us all and really provides a bright future for us in the years to come. So I look forward to the conversation after. I think we're going to pass it to our digital platform. I see Christine's there and
Yeah.
even Mr. Godfrey's here now.
Robin, you joined us, I think, right after Anthony did the Garden Center report, but Christine or Robin, I think we can bring you on if you want to say anything.
Christine Levat, I am chair of the CNLA Government Relations Committee. And government relations is very exciting these days. And we had said, you know, I don't know, 7 years ago, maybe, Alan, that climate change was a silver platter subject for us, and all the committees that GR intersects with have really taken climate change, and I think we have optimized it and we have used it and continue to do so to our advantage. So government relations intersects with many of the committees now at the CNLA, HR, Alan at Climate, LCC, Landscape Canada. Then we have COHA and ELCA across the pond, and of course communications. So if I were to talk about the highlights of this year and where GR really sees the opportunities going forward, I see the Canadian Landscape Standard positioning with the government as a real victory for both the CSLA and the CNLA. I see National Research Council very excited when the CNLA calls. They have given us absolute carte blanche as subject matter experts to go into these landscape architecture sections and revise and put in the spec notes that say what we want to say, align the Canadian Landscape Standard, and really push for the things that are going to make the landscape performance matter, right? The emphasis now is on the performance of the landscape and the plants. So all of a sudden, everything that we've been saying in the Canadian Landscape Standard and in general advocacy is coming to fruition. Everybody's now listening. We enjoy a very good relationship with FERPAC, which is the Federal Industry Real Property Advisory Council, of which CNLA got a seat on 5-6 years ago. So we now regularly speak to this committee. It's been all Zoom. It's going back to face starting this month. So we're talking with them about the National Master Specification. We're talking with them about vendor performance. We're talking about knowledge transfer in landscape projects. And the big thing there is we're talking about a maintenance plan. So we have an opportunity, again, with the Canadian Landscape Standard to go into Section 9 maintenance and create a cohesive one kind of document, landscape or maintenance plan for all levels of landscaping companies to be able to use. We are pulling through the government's own wish list and own verbiage into our advocacy out of, say, that like the 2030 emissions reduction plan, for example. We're looking at the biodiversity milestone document with ECCC and COHA. The greening government and the decarbonizing of the construction sector has opened the doors for us for consultation. The other thing I think I keep pressing for, and I believe that we should really start to look at calculating valuations and impacts for compliance and offset credits, for example, with green infrastructure. We really do have to start to better understand our impact, and we have to start monetizing our impacts because that is coming, particularly through the green building certifications. We know from recommendation 6 out of the Pan-Canadian Urban Forest Strategy that they want municipalities to start putting green assets, green infrastructure on the balance sheet. So exciting. So we're looking at that. So I'll finish with, I've been taking notes this whole day and dropping in the whole air security piece and the water piece into the Ministry of Health column. Again, we enjoy really good relationships with a select few ministries, but we are looking to expand that. I'll finish off by saying that I'm really excited about the communications. Frank, thank you so much for your presentation. I thought it was great. Love the video. No shock there. The guys do a great job. One of the government relations goals is going to be to take that messaging and align it or reinforce it, like be a conduit between the consumer and the government, right? A missing piece right now for government relations, I believe, is the provincial and municipal relationship. How deep we have to dig there, I'm not sure yet, but that is on government relations radar. And I do, in fact, see the two foundations as being very important as a communications channel there. So I will leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Hey, Mr. Godfrey.
Hey, sorry about that. Yeah, Anthony, said a lot. I really appreciate that, Anthony. Kind of summed it up at Garden Centers Canada. One thing I will mention, though, I think this is almost my 15th year on the CNLA board. And I remember my first year when I came in, I had a board member or executive member or whoever it was in my first year, 15 years ago. And I remember he said to me, garden centers are dead. You know, garden centers are dying. So 14 years later, you know, COVID made garden centers relevant again. And I know I've said that many, many times to different people, but that was a really interesting anomaly what happened in our industry, especially for garden centers, and how we became relevant again, which is almost unbelievable. It was one of those few positive things out of COVID that came about, but it got the society in general back into gardening. And I think independent garden centers have really benefited from that. And my biggest goal going forward would to get more independents to join our association. I mean, the whole dynamics of independent garden centers against with other garden centers in the industry, whether it's a box store or grocery store or pop-up or whatever you want to call it, the whole dynamics have changed and the market's changed so much. So it'll be interesting where we go from here. It'll be interesting we can maintain the COVID bump, as I call it, but really at the end of the day, a lot of exciting things going on in garden centers in Canada and around the world. And I think that pandemic brought people back to reality, and whether it was food security or whether, you know, plants that are the new pets for mental health, whatever you want to call it, the positivity that came out of, and now the science that's coming out of, you know, plants in general and what we're hearing across the world, I think it's exciting time for garden centers. I think I'm more optimistic than I ever was. Maybe 15 years ago, I wonder why I went into the family business. I feel a lot better about it now. So yeah, I think it's exciting times. It's a great association. We got a lot of really exciting things, and I'm looking forward to the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. Okay, we still have a few people online, which we will try to bring on if they have any questions. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me? We'll try to bring on if they have any questions. If not, I would encourage them to type it in the chat and we'll read it out. Do we have any questions from the floor, from those that are still with us? Yes. Maureen, who's running the mic? There he is.
Yeah, so this is a question for Jeff. On the temporary foreign workers, have you been able to connect with farms or Wally to talk about kind of lessons learned that they went through in developing and working with the SOP program and supporting the agriculture sector?
Good question. Leslie, did we liaise with farms or Wally at all? Have we liaised with farms or Wally to ask them? Oh, just about sort of their journey and any challenges that they had to overcome in terms of the SOP program?
I've reached out to them recently in regard to the different changes that recently happened with the SOP program. Haven't really heard anything back from them. Everything seems to be going standard practice so far.
Definitely. I know That's one of the main differences, like in terms of SOP, the sort of need to provide housing and the standards around housing is different than TFW. So with TFW, you have to support the worker in terms of finding housing, and the housing can't be more than 30% of their sort of gross wage. Yeah. But I know just from my time as BCLNA chair that housing and the rules around housing is quite extreme. Like, you know, we'd have a centimeter rip in a screen door on a house, and that housing would be ruled as insufficient until that screen door was replaced, right? So yeah, standards are high for sure.
Anybody else? I'll fill in here for a minute because Phil needs a question. He said he needed a question. So Phil, on your COP report, the first 3 words were "stay the course." We, as pointed out earlier, I can't remember, it was leadership summit or somewhere else today, we talked about the fact that the CNLA bit off a big commitment 3 years ago when we started investing in COP, when it wasn't listed as one of our priorities. So I'll get into a little bit more about why we do kind of some of that stuff as a leadership team. But Phil, do you want to, Alan gave a perspective, but I think from sitting from CFA and COHA's point of view, maybe you could give a little bit of a different perspective and explain why COP is so important to you.
That's a big topic, but one of the bits that I have shared that I think was really exciting, and the visual is pretty dramatic. Every country in the world, and to give you an example of what I mean by every country in the world, the state of Palestine actually had its own booth, or not booth, they're actually buildings at COP28. So, you know, if there are 300 countries around the world, pretty well 300 different pavilions. And what was consistent in every single pavilion, bar none, was that water was on the wall. So if you think of a room this big, and some of the rooms are this big, and all around the outside, you've got posters. And what's consistent in every one of the posters is economic opportunity, water, and plants. And that was the same in every booth. But we're not recognized as being part of the climate change equation. We have got to do a better job of connecting the dots for them all. They're using our plants, and we haven't actually monetized, as Christine just said, that piece. And we need to do a better job of monetizing it. But having said that, we were invited. So CFA, Canadian Federation of Agriculture, can take any crop with it. 3 people were invited, and our group was one of those 3. We should pat ourselves on the back that we were able to do that. We weren't just able to do it in Egypt. We were able to follow it up and do it again this year. Normally, the second time I go somewhere, it's to apologize, but this time I was actually contributing. I don't think that I missed a pavilion. I was probably working from most mornings between 10 o'clock when I got there till about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And then we always met at the same hotel, and we're working from 5 to 7, admittedly lubricating ourselves. But we did lots of great work. At the beginning, we started off a table of 3, and at the end, I think we were tables of probably close to 20 people. There was that many people that wanted to hang out and find out what our story was. And in that group of Canadian agriculture people, you've got a lot of big hitters there, from pulse to canola to cattle, many of the grains, and we're sitting in that group. So our connection to agriculture is actually something we should be proud of. So that part, Bill, is probably something that is worth sharing with people in the room. But I think the bigger piece is that in the conversation around how we have to embrace climate change in all its forms, one of the very few, if not the only one, that is a terrestrial climate change game changer is the plant. And we've got to find more ways of getting that message out. So what Frank did today, going to COP, building these relationships, they're so vital. So there is a a vision, I think, that Alan and Anthony and Bill have been sort of talking about, is to create some kind of an organization that would come together to talk about these things. So I could probably go on and on and on. I'd really like to get questions from the audience about how we can start to leverage these relationships and some ideas. That's what I'd really like to do. So Bill, it's an exciting time. I hope we continue with COP. I was paid for to go by COP, not by CNLA, but by COHA. And I think my total bill was about $7,000. That may seem like a lot of money, but when you think about the fact I was there for close to 10 days and the amount of connections we made, I actually think it's money. It's not even a blip on our budget, really. So Bill, I could probably keep going on, but it's exciting. I think it's exciting times for our association, frankly.
I think Alan wanted to follow up.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to Phil's point a little bit. It's really understanding, and Christine certainly could chime in as well. Policy around climate, when we hear most of the headlines in the news, and as Phil alluded to, the backdrop at most pavilions was around economic. Big difference this year over previous years was there's a shift from forests to oceans. So we saw water just about everywhere, but that's the reality. Our planet's covered 80% water. But again, it's telling of how leadership is looking at trying to find solutions that fix the human problem, because also what was true at almost every single presentation that we participated in or listened to was the impact on human health. They always started with that urgency. And again, we're in front of the UN and most delegates are trying to have influence there. But then the solutions went to things like oceans. And there was a disconnect on how we bring nature-based solutions into cities, in natural environments and natural ecosystems. There seemed to be a lot of desire to follow that. What's also interesting, and any one of us that attended, when you meet, and I had the opportunity to sit with Elizabeth May in the Canadian Pavilion, and here I am explaining to our Canadian Green leader how plants are part of life in our cities and provide the very air that we breathe and impact Canadians, is telling of how important it is that we're there. Policies and the decisions from our leadership happen on these stages. They come back to Canada, and we've historically tried to influence those decisions back here domestically. And again, I'd love to hear Christine, or again, she can share with you the power of these things that sometimes seems way bigger than who we are, but not being there and not being part of that conversation, expecting change back here in Canada is almost impossible today. So part of Phil alluded to a little bit, Bill and I have been working on, we'll attend the Green City Summit in Doha with Bill to really explore the idea of our partners, because we've been doing it for decades. Incredible relationship with IGCA, AIPH, ALCA, NELP in the United States, all the different societies through Christine's help with Societies of Landscape Architects. We heard a little bit today, even bringing designers back in through Landscape Canada. We are very networked in the world. And the fact that we represent everything from the farm through to retail and into the design, build, maintenance aspect of urban life is the power of the Canadian story. But when we go into this stage, bringing these partners together as one, and Canada being a leader in that voice, that we're not only, the cost is significant and can be significant, as Phil alluded to, but the return on investment's incredible. And the power of our story when we can share it with these partners that we're already working with and make it visible to the leaders of not just in Canada, but to others around the world. That's where we saw and learned some really important lessons. There's a lady, Pamela Conrad, a landscape architect in the US. She's also a leader with the World Landscape Architects. I don't think there was a pavilion I went to or a stage where she wasn't speaking. That wasn't happening 2 years ago. So this was CFA and Agriculture Canada's second year at COP. So again, 28 COP meetings, and only now are plants and agriculture and things coming to. Even this year was the first of all the days and the themes. There's an agriculture day specific to it. So what we're seeing is an incredibly accelerated transition here, an important transition, but also an urgency to bring some of these pieces together and participate so that we're part of that conversation as these things happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if you have anything to add, Christine.
Yeah, I just real quick. Yeah, so I think that up to this point, the messaging is good, and it's almost become, and this is not a criticism, but it's almost become an institutional advertising message. You know, it's trees are good and this sort of thing. I think it's time, and I think we don't do it at our peril. I think it's time to figure out how we can, again, value and understand and monetize green infrastructure. We see this coming from ELCA. So they did, Egbert sent out a series of questions because, again, they are working as part of the Green Deal in the EU on the EU nature restoration law. And one of the questions was, you know, what is the value? So there's going to come a time, and I don't know how we're going to do this because, and it really should be some sort of a standardized valuation for the landscape industry, if at all possible, almost like a gap for accounting. Because at the end of the day, the decision makers need to look at the costs and the value. So Phil and I talked about the cost benefit analysis or the benefit cost ratio. So this is what decision makers need. So I think we stay on the course with what we're doing with the messaging, but I do believe that we have to underpin it somehow with some kind of valuations. And what surprises me actually is that the landscape architects haven't jumped all over this, but maybe Pamela Conrad, which Alan and I hopefully are going to talk to next week, maybe this is the door into that. Maybe they are thinking about it. And if that's the case, and they're thinking about this now on a global issue, and ELCA's thinking about it, and the CNLA is thinking about it, maybe this is when all roads are converging, right? So again, very exciting. Honestly, you could talk all day about this.
Do we have anything else from the audience? Anything? Victor.
I have a question for a friend. So, so you had for Phil specifically, since it's for a friend, I'm asking for because they're very shy. So they want to know, now that we have this economic impact study, you have the benefits of environmental horticulture, you're a COP, you have this agri-marketing money. One part that's missing, that's been discussed for a while, and it brings it full circle, is the life cost analysis to actually get into the technical standpoint from what is green infrastructure that we're talking about, and actually be able to present studies or firsthand research, whether it's at COP or the government. And as research chair, you actually have quite a nice budget and resources, but I don't think it's officially been directed perhaps at your committee. So my friend wanted me to ask. You know who you are.
You must have been listening to Peter and I at coffee time. But anyway, one of the ways that the Sustainable Development Goals were developed by the UN was to actually turn the cost benefit analysis upside down and create what's called a benefit cost ratio. And Christine just talked about it. And what's fascinating, if you look at each of those 17 Sustainable Development Goals, they do a benefit cost ratio to see what the cost of the initiative is, what the benefit would be, and then come up with a ratio. And they say any ratio under 5 isn't worth doing. And some of the ratios are really worth doing because they have numbers like 30 and 40. And how do you put a cost on a human life or a benefit on saving? So in other words, if let's say one of the goals was we're going to eradicate malaria, for example, and there's 4 million people a year that die from malaria. How do you actually put a number on those 4 million lives? But in the end, funnily enough, they do, and they come up with a number. So to answer your question for your friend Victor, wherever he is, I did ask this question at coffee time. What things are relevant in the landscape industry? So we just sort of spitballed an idea and said, if you've got it, like many times, if you plant a tree properly with the right soil and give it the right maintenance, generally speaking, Peter and I think that the tree doesn't die. And we don't know what that number is, but we threw a number out. I think it was about $2,000, right? 1,500, maybe $2,000 to plant a tree and have it looked after properly until it's established. Whatever that number is, we actually don't know that number at this stage, but we should. And then what's the cost of replacing it every 3 and 4 years because we don't do the maintenance properly? And Christine's been talking about this type of research for quite a while. So I think it used to be called a life cycle cost assessment, right, Christine?
Yeah. Yep.
And now I think they're calling a life cycle assessment, aren't they? It's changed a bit. But anyway, if you could turn it around and use the same method that the UN does for its sustainability goals, is start to have a benefit cost ratio and start publishing that ratio and using it with municipalities and said, you could do it badly and this is what it's going to be, and you could do it properly and this is what it could be. There is an opportunity. So yes, I do have a fair research budget, and would I like to start doing some of that? That's kind of why I introduced in this morning's meeting, hey, let's look at research in a different way. So I'm hoping that that information is useful to your friend, Victor.
So imagine, I'll just jump in here, and yes, we all know it's me. So imagine if we did come to some degree of a mathematically defensible, standardized valuation. Imagine the power of that tool in the hands of a landscape designer, for example, a landscape design build contractor, a retail garden center. So yeah, I think it's, I guess I'm preaching to the converted now, but I'm glad to hear that research might be looking at this. But again, it would be nice if it was standardized. We should talk to Egbert as well.
Okay, Alan, two minutes.
I'll try to do it in a minute and a half. This was another key takeaway from COP28 that was different from previous COPs. Metrics, finance, and risk are key elements that the world's looking at. So Phil, I think you're 100% on track. I look at other examples in life of where we've looked at coming up with a coefficient of what performance looks like in success. I look at the energy guide that's on every appliance that we buy and how that impacts our buying decisions. I look at the way they display calories in stores. I look at the way we look at fuel ratings on vehicles. One of the takeaways there was right now, almost all environmental risk is associated with this. The World Bank, we talked about it at COP. The World Economic Forum was talking about it at COP. Almost everything, and I talked to their insurance folks here today, they're utilizing insurance risk management as the key metric for investment into climate change. Their biggest fear is the insurance industry is scared to death of insuring climate risk. And if they lose their key metric, then we're all going to be in trouble, because where's the money going to come from? I see a huge opportunity. I came away with it. I talked to the sustainability professor at the University of Guelph a week ago, and I was speaking on sustainability to their business students. And he's super excited. My goal coming back was to go meet with the faculty, because again, a university like Guelph, that's high regard for academic excellence in agriculture, landscape, economics, environment, they're also looking for ways to partner with industry and government to find solutions. So Phil, I'm 100% on board. If your research and has the availability, I've already tapped a couple people on the shoulder post-COP to look at this, because I think this is a massive opportunity for our sector to really accelerate some of the things we're doing. It speaks to our climate clean air calculator. But there's more that can be done here to come up with. I think it truly has to be something that's transferable. If we can work with ELCA, AIPH, and others to come up with a standard, I think we're onto something.
That was 3 minutes. So we're going to roll in just a few minutes here into the AGM. The guests that are with us are welcome to stay as observers. As a matter of fact, most of the board becomes an observer during our AGM. I just want to make a couple of comments about today. I liked it. There's some growing pains. The issue I have is, how do we get from here to having 100 guests in the room that want to find out more about what our leadership at CNLA is doing? Because this team that's sitting at this table, the provincial members, representatives that are in the audience, the executive that weren't up on this table, are the leadership team. And they are very nimble. That's why we make some decisions on the fly. That's why we spent over 8 hours budgeting this year between the meeting in November and yesterday. And we're coming to the AGM with recommendations. We came to the board earlier, and hopefully everything gets ratified tonight. But this is the team that makes that happen, and it's a I think the term that I used when asked about what you see bringing things together in the federation, or what's the most important thing, was I said collaboration, and we seem to collaborate, which is really, I find kind of interesting when you throw 22 A personalities in a room and there's anybody left standing at the end of the day. I think is always, although I've heard the term used before, but they will eat their own if they have to. I guess I should sum it up there. We're going to try our best to build on this. I think if we're going the half-day format, maybe we don't try to jam too much in. It was our first time and we really wanted to cover some bases. This was not my idea, by the way. This was the staff's idea. I was the one that just said, let's make room in the agenda and make it happen. So thank you very much to the staff, Tegan, and everybody else that organized this today. Very well done and much appreciated.